Hello, thank you, Amra. So I'll just describe myself. I'm she, her, and I'm wearing blue and red. I've got short brown hair, glasses and headphones. And I'm speaking to you today from Norfolk, from Norwich, where I live. I'm going to start sharing my screen and just realized done that classic thing of going through my slides and not being at the start, but here I am. So I'm going to talk about digital culture leadership in the Earth crisis from the point of view of my work in Climate Museum UK. Some of the key themes I'll cover are how we're a part of a movement for regenerative culture, and we invite you to be part of that too. I'll talk a bit about why I use the term Earth crisis and not climate crisis. A really key point is that leadership within this wide sphere of conservation, museums or heritage, has to be about the conservation of life on Earth. I'll make some points by drawing on some examples on how we have to leverage change where it will make the most difference. And I'll focus a bit then on how we might engage with audiences, because my background is, museum education, learning, public engagement, and less so about the kind of operational back of house digital strategy or sustainability strategies. So I'll be making the point that we need to focus less on communication for cultural consumption and more on activation for change. So a bit about Climate Museum UK. We were registered in late 2019, so we're still very new, considering that COVID really hampered our evolution. But of course, the transition of a lot of cultural engagement to online interaction in that phase has actually helped in a way. We're an experimental museum, so we're really asking questions about what museums are, and we're stirring and collecting responses to the climate and ecological emergency. And a key part of our structure or nature is that we're a distributed museum of creative people based across the UK, connecting and working online, but also in our local areas. We're in clusters of areas, in particular in Norfolk and in London, but we'd really want to spread further afield. And we produce and gather art objects, ideas, games and books, and then we use them to activate people. And we also do a lot of activation online. And these help people to play, make, think and talk about the Earth crisis and to open their imaginations to possible futures. So a big part of what we do as well is advocacy. So we're advocating for a kind of emergency response, for culture to actually face this emergency and shift their missions. And we're very active as a group of people in Culture Declares. So I'm a co-founder. Victoria Burns is the national coordinator of Culture Declares. So we have a lot of overlap between our two organisations. So Climate Museum UK is a CIC platform for people to raise funds and do work, whereas Culture Declares is a movement. It's a collective of people who are creating local hubs and communities as well to kind of hold each other to account. And I've developed a framework called Culture Takes Action, which is used to collect stories of how culture can contribute, how it can help create a safe and just space for humanity within the limits of the planetary boundaries. And I've come up with these 8 pathways. I won't go through them now, but you can find a toolkit online on culturedeclares.org. And we run training sessions in this as well. So moving on to the question about why I'm talking about an Earth crisis and not using the term climate crisis. So I do use terms like climate change, climate breakdown, but within this bigger frame. And I think that we always need to talk about, you know, the planetary emergency, rather than just focus on carbon and climate, because quite often climate change is used as a cover-all term for this much bigger picture. And the result of that is that we often forget or ignore the justice issues about, for example, the loss of land rights with the change of use of land, for example, with the deforestation that is being used for animal agriculture. So we forget about the intersections of all of these factors as well. So I've come up with this framework, you know, to help you think about the carbon tunnel vision that has really dominated our discourses around the environment. And it's not that climate isn't important, it's that we need to understand the bigger picture. So yes, moving on to thinking about digital literacy and digitally literate leadership. I was thinking about this and was thinking about what are the different frames of leadership within the heritage sector. And at the centre, I thought essentially literate leadership is about wisdom. It's about being informed by, you know, by morals, by purpose, by you know, a sense of being informed by data, and to help you be efficient. It's also about being informed by audiences and what people need and what wider communities need. So all of these kind of themes of engagement, sustainability, efficiency are all really vital. And digital leadership sits generally at the moment in this corner of efficiency, supporting, you know, financial leadership, engaging with people, educational leadership. But I'm suggesting that in an Earth crisis, it needs to move right across so that literate leadership is absolutely digitally enabled and informed by regenerative principles, so that in future, the heritage sector is primarily driven by ecological or ecocentric leadership. So this involves really very clearly understanding what's wrong and what's possible. And this is my attempt to sum up essentially what's wrong. We are perpetuating our cultural sector is perpetuating and operating within a degenerative culture based on extraction, competition, consumerism, and limitless growth. And we need to move towards a regenerative culture of restoration, cooperation, gifting, and abundance. And so, you know, I just think the museums and heritage world has a huge amount to contribute. So the role of museums in, you know, creating these narratives of a degenerative system. I mean, I can share these slides and you can look at this in more detail, but there are many ways in which museums are part of this overarching use of technology as a means of control, you know, of educating people and creating particular mindsets. So we need to shift from these kind of degenerative mindsets where, for example, economic growth is seen as normal, you know, the normal goal of any activity. And we need to shift from that. So another thing is that we have to be mindful of digital colonialism. So for example, you know, the invisibility of Indigenous people in data sets and museum collections. And we also have to be really aware about the whole notion of extractivism and how it's accelerated. And it's not just about extracting minerals and coal, it's also about extracting people's heritage, their rights, and their data, for example. So I said I would talk about as well how we have to leverage change where it really matters. So I want to slightly challenge the notion that digital sustainability is about, reducing your carbon footprint. That is absolutely vitally important. But we also have to be aware that financial investments are really important too. So big digital agencies like PayPal, Meta, Google, Disney are the impact, the emissions impact of their financial investments is 100% more than the impact of their digital activities. So be aware of that, that financial investment has a huge impact. Another factor is about how the digital sector can pull the cultural sector into this whole world of being open for purpose. There's so much emerging right now that we can be inspired by. So, for example, there's the Open Future Coalition that is all about supporting organizations that are for impact. There's the Dark Matter group who are exploring ideas about radical generosity. There's the Open Climate Campaign that's about sharing of research outputs. So these are kind of Earth crisis informed initiatives, but part of a wider set of work that's all about creating a radical commons. And really the culture sector has to be part of that. And just moving to my conclusion for the final point, which is really about how we need to think about audiences in terms of active citizens and to help them actually cope with the severity and uncertainty of this Earth crisis. This is Renee Lertzman's golden trine of behavior change, which she explores. She's a psychologist, and she explores how people respond to this overwhelming story of the Earth crisis with three main responses. The first is to react with denial. You fail to explore the truth. The second response that emerges is disavowal. You just can't make sense of it. It's too big, it's too overwhelming, it conflicts with your expectations and desires. And then the third, as people start to acknowledge the science, they start to rationalize and they jump to action, the sort of ameliorative therapeutic action that makes people feel they're doing something. And so she puts at the corners of the triangle ways that we might actually help. And I'm interpreting this in terms of how museums and heritage can help, enabled by digital leadership. So looking to the past, we can help people learn and discover truths and histories of extraction that led to the Earth crisis and actually support a reparative sense of justice. Focusing on the presence, we can make sense of people's emotional and social response to the emergency and support people to be caring and resilient. And looking to the future, we can help people take action and grow their appetite for change and support this regenerative culture. I have a couple more slides, but I think I'm going to stop there as I'm running out of time.